Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Genesis Invitational Data Dive Show. Per usual, on a Monday night, we're going to take our first look at the forecast for the Pacific Palisades, figure out if a wave advantage will develop and how the course is going to play this week. We're going to take as deep of a statistical look into Riviera Country Club that we can. Again, I only am going back to 2024, considering that the format of the tournament has only been played once at Riviera this way, meaning, limited field, limited cut. So we'll take as much of a deep statistical dive as we can. We'll look at some info from Pebble Beach, see how the players played last week, and if there are any outlier performances or perhaps players that might be flying under the radar. Didn't do anything in terms of research, again, only going back to 2024. So we're going to cover as much as we can for Riv. So let's get into it. We're going to start first with a shout out that is the first time, I believe, in a while, I know in 2026. A big congratulations to Trip to Pluto is the YouTube name that was in chat last night. Let me know that he hit the, or he or she hit the Morikawa outright at 70-1 for Pebble Beach. So congratulations, Trip, on your magnificent hit for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And of course, if you had success for Pebble Beach in any facet, whether it was outrights, whether it was in DFS, it doesn't even have to be golf. If you have success, if you play fantasy NBA, fantasy hockey, maybe you're doing some things for the Olympics, whatever success you have in your wagering endeavors, let me know. I would love to be able to shout you and others in the community out who have success. So again, congratulations, Trip, on your hit. We're going to try and make it back-to-back for you this week at the Genesis Invitational. As usual, all statistics provided tonight and every night are from both Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts. I am gradually migrating over to the Rabbit Hole, so bear with me as I get used to all of the data that is presented over there in its various ways and differences from Fantasy National. Fantasy National has been acquired or merging with the Rabbit Hole, so make sure you check out the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need at the power of your fingertips, so you don't have to listen to an idiot like me. You can go there and figure out what you need and who you're going to wager, and it has a DFS optimizing lineup and tournament simulator. I can't recommend it enough. Go check out the Rabbit Hole. You won't regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday regarding the tournament, some patterns of previous winners and things like that. Again, for reasons I've explained, I didn't do anything for Riv, but that should be back next week when we start the Florida swing. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He sends that out on Sunday. Continues to update you throughout the week with his recent form, course history, and the big deal, or the biggest article, being on Wednesdays, which has his top plays, his top values, projected ownerships, all of that. Wouldn't recommend it if I did not believe in it, so go check out Gabe's article. Make sure you're subscribed to that, and follow him over on social media, because that is where we put our detailed write-ups for the 2026 Picks Challenge. If you want to see the reasoning why we're choosing the players that we do each week, we put that over on his social media page. And then lastly, for this intro, we're live, chat's open, want to hear from you all. How do you think Riv's going to play this week? Who's your early favorite? Have you made any wagers? Anything and everything Riviera Country Club and the Genesis Invitational, put in chat. Would love to hear from you. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2026 Genesis Invitational. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday evening with the extended forecast over at Windfinder, and it is very similar to what we saw at the end of Pebble Beach. So I center this camera. Wet, cold, windy. Even Los Angeles is going to be that way this week. Apologies, I thought I cleaned off my glasses and I still see a spot on them. As you can see, supposedly they got hit with a pretty good amount of rain today. Cold temperatures, rainy, windy, and it's going to be like that for a lot of the week, to be honest with you. It's going to be that way a little bit more tomorrow and into Wednesday. Now, Thursday, the wind dies down a little bit, but it's still looking like it's going to be pretty wet. Looking like some rain in the forecast for Thursday at the Genesis Invitational at Riviera. And it's going to be pretty cold for the majority of the tournament. As you can see here, a high of 50 on Thursday. Does warm up to maybe 60 on Friday. Saturday and Sunday looks like the wind is really going to die down and be pretty darn pleasant, albeit, a little bit more chilly than what this area is probably used to at this time of year. But the beginning of the tournament, particularly Thursday and maybe even a little bit of Friday, it's going to be cold, it's going to be wet, it's going to be windy. So that's definitely going to play a factor that we're going to want to take note of throughout the week. And although this is a limited field event, I don't think there's going to be a wave advantage, but we'll have to see when the forecast kind of formalizes on Wednesday night. We'll take a look at that as well. But early on this week, just be aware the course does look like it's going to be pretty darn wet, especially Thursday, so we're not going to get as firm and fast conditions as we normally get around Riviera. This is going to be a twofold, this is going to have twofold consequences. Generally speaking, these greens have been pretty firm, so this means that the greens are going to be probably more receptive than they've been in the past, and you're not going to get as much run out in the fairway. So I'm thinking that there could be a little bit of some emphasis in distance this week. But anyway, there's a look at the forecast for Riviera. It is going to be wet and cold and rainy, chilly, windy from now until probably looking like Thursday evening or even Friday morning. And then the weekend does look like it calms down, warms up a little bit, and looks like it's great for golf over the weekend. But we'll have to see how that materializes throughout the week. So with that, we're going to go over to the rabbit hole over at BetSperts and take a look at some key metrics that we think are going to play well this week at Riviera. Normally, I like to go to something called the comparison course file. Again, with only 1 year of data that I am really considering for Riv. Didn't find it very useful to dig into all of that. But what we can do is take a look at 2024 and how it played, at least in terms of a strokes gained perspective for the players that played in the 2024 Genesis Invitational. Now, this could be me not used to the rabbit hole, but all I can gather at the moment is the strokes gained. We don't have anything like distance and par 3 performance or birdies are better, nothing like that. All we are seeing, at least in my rudimentary knowledge of the rabbit hole, is that we can look at strokes gained. So we can take a look at that throughout this evening, but we covered this a little bit last night. We'll cover it again and then look at some of the players that we think are going to perform well at these various metrics and shot types and all that. Just to go over Riv again, just very, very quickly. These are very large large Poa annua greens, Kikuyu fairway, and Kikuyu rough. This is the only course that has Kikuyu fairway. It is very difficult to gain off the tee here, and that's why I think some distance and some off the tee might be a little bit more important this week than usual, especially with how wet the course is going to be seemingly on Thursday and Friday. I imagine some carry distance might be appropriate to look at. Hitting the fairways are generally pretty difficult, but that's because they're firm and you get some run out. Might not be as bad this week and this year, but there's very little penalty for missing the fairway, so long as you're not in the fairway bunkers. That's where it gets a little bit more difficult, as sand saves are a lot more difficult, especially around the green. Fairway bunkers are difficult. The rough is not difficult to play out of. It's only 2 inches long. It is considered short. Scrambling from the rough is easy around the green. But putting is very difficult with these generally very fast Poa annua greens. I know the Rabbit Hole is listing this as average. 12.5 is pretty darn fast, even by PGA standards. So I would label this as fast. Again, but that's just me. Rabbit Hole has this as average. The par 5s are easy, so you're definitely going to have to take advantage of par 5s, but par 4s are pretty darn difficult around here. Putting is very difficult around here. And if we continue to take a look at some key metrics around Riv, accuracy a lot less. We talked about that. It's just a lot less to gain off the tee here. Good drives percentage is less because these greens are pretty hard to hit. You see that here. Greens from fairway bunkers, very difficult. Almost 43% less. Let's see. Other notables here, like proximity is a lot further away. I mean, that's explained a little bit by the size of the greens as well. Around the green, it really is all about the sand. Around the green overall is a little bit easier. Short grass is much easier if players are scrambling from short grass, and even from the rough. It is, easier per se. The only thing is that you don't do it as often. 30% rough, 23% sand, 47% from short grass. But, around the green per shot from the rough, a lot easier. Proximity might be a little bit easier. But from the bunkers, it's a lot more difficult. So maybe we look at some sand saves, maybe not. Much like what we did for Pebble, we're going to look at some various putting metrics for Riv, considering it is very, very difficult to putt here, no matter what range you're looking at. 3 to 5, 4 to 8, inside 10, inside 15. Very, very difficult. We're going to look at some 150 to 200 approach distances or approach proximities. Su's been good from that range. And then you can see how 2024 played when Hideki just kind of went nuclear on Sunday to win. Gained quite a bit putting. He was amazing around the green. He actually didn't have an overwhelmingly great ball striking week, as you can see. He was just very, very solid with the short game. Will Zalatoris was doing Will Zalatoris things, actually gaining a little bit on the greens. Luke List was hitting his irons extremely well, but had an uncharacteristically great putting week. Cantlay, irons and putting. Like if we sort on off the tee, like Rory, Hadwin had a very good off the tee week. Cam Young, but you see, like off the tee didn't add a whole lot. 24th, and then sure a top 5, 16th, 10th, 19th, 24th. That looks great, but remember this is a very limited field. We had position. There we go. How many players made the cut? 51. So your 24ths and your 16ths aren't nearly as good as what it may seem. Whereas if you sort on the players who had amazing iron weeks, top 10, Taylor Moore hit his irons exceptionally well, didn't do much else well, still made the cut. Runner up, top 5, again 16th. So a lot in the irons, a lot in the putting. Your top 3 putters of the week finished inside the top 5. Your top 4 putters finished inside the top 10. Nick Hardy putted very well, but didn't do anything else well and missed the cut. And then another top 10. So a lot of approach, a lot of putting. I do think off the tee is going to matter a little bit, especially carry distance this week, considering how wet Thursday and Friday are going to be. Good evening, Trip. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. I gave you your very well-deserved shout-out in the intro, so apologies if you didn't see that. But again, congratulations on the hit on Morikawa. We're going to try and make it back-to-back for you this week. And I'm going to try and hit my second outright of 2026. Good to see you in chat this evening. Xander Hovland Homa for me this week. Still contemplating Ludwig. Ludwig, I know he played well, and that's another very good point, as I do have the Pebble Beach Pro-Am from last week up here, and we can take a look at how some players performed last week and see if there are perhaps some red herrings or some guys that might be getting overlooked, maybe played better than what their finishing position suggests. And then won't bet him, but scared of Cam Young. Cam Young played pretty well here in 2024. This does seem like a logical place or a logical course setup that suits well for Cam Young. I know he finished runner-up here, 22 or 23. Again, I'm just going 2024 due to the exact same format, top 50 in ties, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's what we're looking at here in terms of some Riv, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and jump back into the players in the field this week. You see that I've got this set for just 2026. That's going to be my default, probably, unless I am, incorporating some filters like scoring conditions, courses. We tried to look at Kikuyu fairways, but we saw that it was just Riviera that has Kikuyu fairways. So with that, why don't we go ahead and start taking a look at a couple of different things. I know we looked at some of this last night. We'll dig into a lot more detail this evening. Let's take a look at, we'll start with, let's just do scoring when it's difficult and very difficult. Riviera generally isn't very, very difficult, but it can be pretty darn difficult. This is one of the best tests in golf throughout the entirety of the year. Outside of the majors, this is why a lot of players like playing this event, because it will test your game throughout the bag, driver to putter. So your top performers going back to the beginning of last year in rounds that have been difficult and very difficult, or on courses that are considered difficult and very difficult. Your top performers in the field this week for the Genesis: Scotty, Rory, Corey Connors, Tommy Fleetwood, Bobby Mack, Harris English, J.J. Spawn, Harry Hall, Russell Henley, and Keegan. I'm kind of interested to see if Bobby Mack played this in 2024, and if he did, how he finished. You mentioned Ludwig. There is what he did in 2024, finishing top 20. Didn't drive it great. Putt okay. Irons were good. I'm a little worried about Ludwig. I still don't know if he's 100% healthy, Trip. I really don't. Because I was very, very high on him at Torrey, 2 or 3 weeks ago, however long that's been now. And he completely just was a non-factor. I know he played, fairly well last week at Pebble. If we look at him, Finishing. Where did he go? So I mean, he wasn't even all that great. He had a pretty good Friday, or excuse me, a pretty good Sunday, and I think a decent Friday. Maybe it was a decent Saturday. But you see, the ball striking's still not there for Ludwig. It's just not. So I am not overly impressed with Ludwig at the moment. Although, like you said, much like Cam Young, this would seem to be a logical choice or a logical fit for Ludwig. He was doing it more in the short game last week at Pebble, and we see that kind of a little bit in 2024. He didn't gain off the tee here, so a little worried with that. I've put in a couple of wagers, absolutely, on a couple of names at prices I liked. But I've been very, very slow this week. I've been trying to look into how they played at Pebble, how they played in 2024. Haven't really fired anything off other than two players that, kind of came to mind. Their prices were, acceptable. It wasn't great, but acceptable in my eyes. And also did put a top 20 on a top 10 on a long shot that I thought was intriguing. So we'll see about that throughout the week. So there's a look at your top performers when or on courses that are considered difficult and very difficult. If we clear those filters, anything else here that looks interesting, we'll move to off the tee. And again, I'm kind of liking this carry distance for this week. We covered the first look of the forecast for the week trip right after the intro, and it's wet, it's cold, much like Saturday and Sunday of Pebble. Looks like what Thursday and Friday is going to be at Riviera. So I imagine the players, Riv isn't going to have the run out that is customary around here. So I'm kind of liking this carry distance, if you will. And I'm going to bring us just to this calendar year. Your top carry distance players in the field this week at Riviera: Aldrich Potgieter, Minwoo Lee, who somebody was pretty darn high on. I don't know if that was you or if that was another viewer last night. Minwoo Lee, Marco Pins, Jake Knapp has been very, very long early on in 2026. Rory, of course, Xander, Cameron Young, Pearson Coody, Kurt Kitayama, and Taylor Pendrith are your top 10 in terms of carry distance. Not too worried about accuracy type stuff. Again, if we take a look at Riv, there's very little penalty for missing the fairway, very little penalty for being in the rough. There's no water hazards around Riv. So, I mean, so long as guys aren't spraying it in different area codes, which some people can, but I think it's more about distance this week. Something else that could be interesting to look at: good drives, players hitting fairways or hitting fairways from the rough. I'm trying to look at some good drive, if there's anything here about good drives, off the tee, fairway accuracy, difficult. Yeah, let's do that. When fairways are difficult to hit, which certainly in years past, Riviera has been that way. When fairways have been difficult to hit, going back to the beginning of last year, your top good drive performers have been Aaron Rai, Alex Noren, Scotty, Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, Daniel Berger, Rico Hoey, Ryo Itatsune, Pearson Coody, and Siwoo are your top 10 good drives. Another way we could maybe look at that, good drives when the fairway penalty is low, rough penalty is low, things of that nature. When players can hit driver with a little bit more freedom, your top good drive players in the field Colin Morikawa, Shane Lowry, Aaron Rai, Siwoo. Now J.J. Spawn jumps up. Nico Echeverria jumps up, who had a very surprisingly good Pebble Beach. Nico hit his irons immaculately last week. Didn't really putt all that great. I mean, he was slightly above field average, but not anything spectacular. Nico could be interesting, considering how well he played last week. Rico Hoey, Matt McCarty, Alex Noren, and Kurt Kitayama are your top 10 good drives when the missing the fairway is pretty forgiving. Anything else here in terms of off the tee? I know we looked at off the tee in general when gaining off the tee is difficult, like it is at Riv. Gaining off the tee is very difficult. I guess we could look at that just very quickly. So when gaining off the tee, to gain off the tee, we'll say difficult and very difficult, just to make sure we have enough rounds here. Your top off the tee players when gaining off the tee is difficult and very difficult: Chris Goddard, Scotty, Rory, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Bobby Mack, Rico Hoey. There's Ludwig, like you mentioned, Taylor Pendrith, and J.J. Spawn. So, like I said, that's kind of where I'm at, is more in the distance. Maybe a little bit of good drives if we use a particular filter. But I'm not going to overweight off the tee this week. I am just much more interested in irons and putting, like I was for Pebble Beach. We'll definitely have some around the green this week as well, but mostly irons and putting. So approach, definitely want to look at this. Your top iron players early on in 2026 in the field this week at the Genesis: Siwoo, Matt Fitzpatrick, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Rory, Ryan Gerard, Justin Rose, Victor, Russell Henley, Jacob Bridgman. Like if we take a look at who hit their irons well last week, like Bridgman was very good. We talked about Nico. Of course, Colin led the way, gaining almost 10. Nico was second. Rory actually hit his irons very, very well last week. Bridgman, Nick Taylor, Tom Hoagie. This is why I was very high on these players. Minwoo was really good with his irons last week, but I'm a little bit concerned about Minwoo because he led or was second in terms of putting behind Tony Finau. You can't expect that to continue. He just had a very good putting week. So, and Tony Finau is just not a very good putter. So, a little bit concerned for those two players specifically because of how much they gain putting. But yeah, there's your top iron players. Let's see, anything else here that might look at going for the green? If we take a look at Riv in terms of going for the green statistics, greens, there we go, going for the green. Players go for the green more often, but they don't get as many birdies around Riv, at least traditionally. They don't hit the green as often. So we could look at this. Go for the green, birdie or better percentage. And let's do that just for 2026. Good evening, Echoes. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciate. Time to make some money. That's obviously the goal. We're going to try and follow in Tripp's footsteps. Find the outright for this week. And if not that, at least have the right players for DFS. But thanks for jumping in chat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. Let's just use 2026. Your top performers in birdie percentage when going for the green. This is, par fives and, short and drivable par fours. Lucas Glover, again, it's just one time, but Lucas Glover actually despite the fact that he didn't finish very high, seems like he had at least a decent enough Pebble Beach coming off of his injury. Lucas Glover doing Lucas Glover things, gaining a bunch or enough with the irons, losing it all with the putter, doing Lucas Glover things. So, okay. Interesting to note that the irons are still there for Lucas. Again, your top performers in 2026 on par 5s and drivable par 4s, getting birdies on those gettable holes. Lucas Glover, Tommy Fleetwood, J.J. Spawn, Matt Fitzpatrick, Scotty, Sahith Theegala, Keegan, Hideki, Sepp Straka, Matt McNeely, and Ludwig. Your best birdie percentage players when going for the green. That's about really all I can think of in terms of this specific approach view, because they actually break out proximity, which we're getting ready to go to next. I don't think I want to look at overall procs. I mean, it is a little bit further than the average tour event, but really it's kind of in this 150 to 200 range most of the time around Riv, and I think that's where I want to go. So overall approach proximity from 150 to 200. Your top performers in the field this week: Victor, Rory, Lucas Glover was very good from that range last week at Pebble, Matt Fitzpatrick, Andrew Novak, Siwoo, Harris English, Alex Noren, Ryan Gerard, and Justin Rose. Okay. If we take a look at both fairway and rough proximity, 150 to 200. I'll sort on the 150 to 175, but we're kind of looking at both of these if that makes sense. Somebody like Siwoo has been very good to start 2026, third and fourth. Victor, 11th and 2nd. This is specifically from the fairway. Harry Hall, to a little bit less of an extent. Sepp Straka. Kitayama, maybe. And then if we look at it from the rough, like players that aren't afraid to take driver, especially since this is very low missed fairway penalty, your proximity from the rough, 150 to 200. Minwoo Lee, been very good in that regard. Look at Alex Noren, 5th and 3rd. Matt Fitzpatrick, 7th and 8th. Fitzpatrick's been up here quite a bit. Taylor Pendrith, top 15 in that regard with the long irons. Generally a pretty good long iron player. Justin Rose. Maybe Harry Hall. So, interesting to note that. But yeah, we're probably going to be focused just on this 150 to 200 overall look here. Whereas, Taylor Pendrith, I said, was a good long iron player, and yet from 150 to 200, he's been, slightly less than middle of the pack in that regard. So he hadn't hit his irons all that well. Okay, we'll move to around the green. How we want to look at around the green. Again, a lot's going to be in terms of sand saves and scrambling from sand, because short grass is very easy around here. I mean, even from the rough can be easy around here. This is red only because it's just not as many around the green shots from the rough, and it's a lot easier here. So again, I'm just kind of looking at sand stuff there. So your top, let's go. We looked at around the green proximity sand last night. Let's do. We can do sand saves, although I don't like sand saves generally because that includes some putting. Like So we would want to look at like sand saves on Poa Anna. Not a whole lot of data there. We can just look at scrambling in general, but that's also incorporating some putting. Let's do, we'll do sand saves. I'll expand the time frame to all of 2025 as well. Now let's bring in like the POA courses. So Pebble Beach. We'll look at Riv, Spyglass, and Torrey South. Your top sand saves players on Poa Anna: Harry Hall, Hideki, Sepp Straka, Aaron Rai, Sam Burns, Tom Kim, Colin Morikawa, Adam Scott, Andrew Novak, Patrick Rogers, and Brian Harman. Again, I don't think this is perfect. I would like to use sand saves in general, but sand saves as a statistic incorporates a little bit of putting with it. Not sure how I feel about that. We could look at just around the green, because greens are going to get missed here. Green and regulation accuracy is difficult. Greens 27% less here than the average tour event. So I mean, players are going to have to rely on a tidy short game regardless. So your top just overall around the green performers early in 2026: Hideki, Ben Griffin, Chris Goddard, Sepp Straka, Tommy, Scotty, Harry Hall, Patrick Rogers, Keegan, and Sammy Valimaki. Okay. But a lot of this, what we're going to look at is putting. We're going to look at a lot of putting. And again, I'll bring back our courses here. That is Pebble Beach, Riv, Spyglass, Torrey South. Apply. And I am going to expand the time frame quite a bit just to make sure players have enough rounds to make it statistically significant. Your top putters on Poa Anna, going back 5 years essentially: Max Homa, Harris English, Denny McCarthy, Justin Rose, Jacob Bridgman, Jake Knapp, Matt McNeely, Pearson Coody, Sahith Theegala, and Sammy Valimaki. Hey, good evening, John. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Players that shape shot well. That is something that Fantasy National had, although it was a little bit convoluted to get to. Let's player database. We'll just go to Scotty. He's what populates. And again, this is just me being transparent with you as the viewer. I'm still trying to get used to the rabbit hole and where everything is located. I imagine that information is here somewhere. I just don't know where. Miscellaneous metrics, apex height, spin rate, ball speed, off the tee. I don't see it immediately. I'll take us to Fantasy National just very, very quickly and show you where it was in that page view. However, I will say don't take this as gospel, because they have, as you can see, they have started or stopped updating a lot of these things because they are merging with the rabbit hole. But there was a way to look at this, to look at what you were asking in here. And I felt like it was on the distance and accuracy page view like I'm on here. But I'm just not seeing it. So, unfortunately, John, I wish I could answer that question for you. Doesn't seem like I'm going to be easily able to. So I apologize for that. Like I said, if I knew where it was in the rabbit hole, I would absolutely take you to that. I don't see it. What's this tournament cheat sheet? This ought to be interesting. It's just showing last 6 months who's been good at these particular, like, distance, ball striking. Okay. So apologies, John. Wish I could answer that for you. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to, at least easily. But I'll try and find that at some point here. Again, just trying to get used to the rabbit hole. Coming back to talking about this week and the metrics that we know are going to play a factor. These are your top putters on Poa annua last 5 years or so. If we take a look at Riv, like, all putting is difficult around here. So, like, your top 3 putt avoiders on Poa annua: Sammy Valimaki, Ryan Fox, Marco Pinge, Matt McCarty, Sam Burns, Jordan Spieth, Harris English, Xander, Nick Taylor, and Minwoo Lee. Those are your top 3 putt avoiders. If we take a look at, like, some putting ranges, outside 10 feet in, like, Pebble Beach was so very clear about their short putting, from 0 to 15 feet essentially. It was very difficult. This is Pebble Beach. But Riv's a lot the same, but I mean, even 15 to 25 feet is difficult here. It's just very difficult to putt around Riv. That's why I was going with just strokes gained putting on Poa annua. But even so, like, if we want to take a look at, let's go outside 10 feet. Considering proximity is pretty difficult at Riv. Your top putters outside 10 feet on Poa annua: Pearson Coody, Colin Morikawa. Might not be great inside 10 feet, but he's actually been pretty good in the mid-length, 10 to 20 feet. He's been solid. Bud Cauley, Andrew Novak, Ryan Fox, Bridgman, Harry Hall, Tom Hoagie, Jake Knapp, and Max Homa. Okay. Anything else here that stands out in terms of putting we might want to take a look at? I'm just thinking more so just flat out putting. If we take a look at scoring, birdie or better percentage, I actually kind of want to look at bogey avoidance. So let's take a look at bogey avoidance when it's difficult and very difficult. I kind of like that. Because pars are generally good scorers around Riviera, with the exception of the par 5s and maybe the par 4, the drivable par 4. I thought it had a scorecard type thing here. I was for sure they had a scorecard type thing. Pebble? Yeah, see here, Pebble has this scorecard thing here, but Riv doesn't. Maybe it's because we didn't play at Riv last year. That's what I'm going to go with, at least. But if we pull up Fantasy National just very quickly, course breakdown, we can take a look at this just very, very quickly. Looking at Riv. Like, your best scoring opportunities are the 3 par 5s by a long shot. There, quarter of a shot, 3/10 of a shot, and then the par 4 or the drivable par 4 10th at a 10th under par. But a lot of these others, par is generally a pretty good score. 100th is like there you go. There's right at par. That is the 12th most difficult, or otherwise the 6th easiest hole on the course, plays the par. That's pretty difficult. It's pretty darn difficult. So, your top bogey avoiders in the field this week when courses have been difficult and very difficult: Scotty, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood, Bobby Mack, Ryo Itsatsune, Jake Knapp, Ricky Fowler, Harry Hall, and Denny McCarthy. Definitely want to look at a couple other things just very quickly before we really dive into the 2024 leaderboard. Let's take a look at par. The par 3s really don't add a whole lot. It's really the par 4s and the par 5s. Your top par 4 performers this year: Lowry, again just from last week, Tommy from last week, Rory, Scotty, Jacob Bridgman, Fitzpatrick, Siwoo, Ryan Gerard, Justin Rose, Ricky, Cantlay, Kitayama. And then, oh gosh dang it. And then your top par 5 performers: Scotty, Jake Knapp, JJ Spawn, Minwoo Lee, Tommy, Chris Goddard, Adam Scott, Keegan, Rory, Lucas Glover, Henley, Hideki, and Sahith Theegala. All right, I'm going to finish the show off this evening. I know it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show by data dive standards. Again, just 1 year of data that I'm comfortable looking at because of the same format. But let's really dig into this leaderboard from 2024. Off the tee, we talked about it. Not a whole lot of top-end performances here. You know, top 25 from Rory. When you're talking about a 70 to 80 man field, that's not impressive. Now, Adam Hadwin was a top 5. Burns was a top 10, but, you know, Young, Finau, Connors, on down, like, didn't contribute a whole lot. Whereas players that were really bad off the tee still were able to make the cut. Obviously, we're nowhere near contention for winning. They were still able to make the cut. If you look at approach, like Mackenzie Hughes, he's very good around the green, so this doesn't surprise me all that much. But like Chase Johnson was last in terms of making the cut. Hoffman, Theegala, Todd. And then your top iron performers, top 10, runner-up, top 5, so on down. Putters, you're going to have to be very good with putting. We're going to have quite a bit of emphasis in putting. I'll say unfortunately, because I don't like relying on putting, but it is what it is. Like Hideki putt very well in 2024. Even Luke List led the field in putting. He's an atrocious putter. Hardy missed the cut, didn't do anything else right. I mean, if he hit any kind of irons at all, he'd have been, middle of the pack at least. Harris English a top 10, had one down here as well. Around the green, what does that look like? Again, Scotty, your winner, was very adept around the green. Poston, J-Day. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of all I have in terms of a data dive show. Not a whole lot to go on. If you feel comfortable mixing different tournament formats, because the Genesis has generally been an invitational, so it's been a smaller field event, but I like keeping things uniform. Meaning, looking at players here, like there's 120 or so players from 2023 backward. So it's not the same. It's not exactly the same, but you can still get an idea of the players who have played fairly well here. Like Max Homa's been great here. Cantlay's been great here. Will Z. Morikawa's generally been pretty solid. J-Day's got a couple of top 10s. We take a look at the year Neiman won. Neiman beat out Morikawa and Cam Young. Adam Scott's had a couple of very high finishes here. I meant to go back to here because Adam Scott. Oh, that was J-Day, the Australian. Where's Adam Scott here? Adam Scott must have missed the cut last year. Well, last year was a full field event. He made the cut to a very poor finish. Scott's been okay here. Victor's actually been pretty darn good here, even with all of his around the green struggles. Scotty, of course, Matt McNeely, California guy. So I mean that's the reason why I'm just going to 2024, and we can't use 2025 because that was played at Torrey. So that's why I'm going 2024. Just that's the last year we've seen Riviera in this same exact format. So it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting challenge this week on how to build the mixed condition model. Certainly have a couple ideas. And then going through a few things tonight, I'm definitely going to add one or two players to my betting card. I fired off 2 outrights and a top 10 earlier today, going through some things during the show this evening. Kind of popped a couple of other players that I'm kind of interested in. Something else that I'm going to do Wednesday night, the first time, and this was actually brought up, I think, the week of the waste management. It might have been brought up last week for Pebble. But somebody mentioned that we should, as a community, fill out a lineup and put it in a contest. So I think I'm going to do that. I think that sounds fun. We'll have to come to a consensus as a community, or as chat, to put in a lineup. I'll put it in a big GPP, and we'll see how it does. And we'll just have some fun with it. So I'm looking forward to doing that on Wednesday, along with everything else that we cover on Wednesdays, including the super forecast and my rankings and making lineups and all that. So should be interesting, should be fun. I'm looking forward to that on Wednesday night. So that's going to do it for a Data Dive show. I want to thank Trip, Echoes, and John for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Quick reminder that I will be a little bit delayed on Wednesday night. I do have prior commitments in the winter on Wednesday evenings, so it'll be about 9:30, maybe a little bit after, when the the DFS Tactics show starts. So just wanted to put that out there. That way you all don't feel like you missed it, or I'm not live right at 9. I will be a little bit delayed. But again, thanks for all the support, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Genesis, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Genesis. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.